Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Shroudex. Somewhere, right now, a document exists that you were never supposed to read. It describes something that shouldn't be possible. A number sits at the top of the page. No name, no story, just a number, and beneath it, an order. Contain it. Study it. Never let the world find out this isn't a single anomaly today. Today we're going further back than that. Before the monsters, before the numbers, before any of it makes sense, there's an organization behind all of it. A structure, a hierarchy, a set of rules so specific, so deliberately clinical, that entire communities have spent almost 2 decades trying to map every corner of it. Today, we open the front door. This is the complete, foundational guide to the SCP Foundation itself. Who runs it, who serves it, who disappears into it, and why every single file this channel has ever covered follows the exact same cold, careful format. Let's begin at the beginning. And a quick note before we do. This is a slightly different kind of episode. No single anomaly today, no one specific number to fear by the end of it. Think of this as the map before the territory. Once you understand how this organization actually thinks, every future file this channel opens is going to hit differently. Strip away every monster, every anomaly, every viral image, and what's left is an idea. A simple one, written into 3 words. Secure, contain, protect. That's the mission statement of the SCP Foundation, a clandestine organization that operates within its own fiction, outside any single government's jurisdiction, answerable to no country and visible to almost no one. Its job isn't to destroy the impossible. Its job is to manage it. Secure means getting to an anomaly before anyone else does. A rival power, a cult, a curious civilian with a camera. Whoever finds it first decides what happens to it next, and the Foundation isn't willing to let that decision belong to somebody else. Contain means exactly what it sounds like, but rarely as simply as it sounds. Containment can be a steel vault. It can also be a set of rules an anomaly has to be tricked into following, or a lie an entire town has to be made to believe. Protect is the word people forget. It isn't only about protecting humanity from the anomaly, it's about protecting humanity's belief that the world still makes sense. That's a harder job than it sounds, and it's the reason almost everything else in this episode exists. Notice, too, what the mission statement doesn't say. It never says destroy. It never says eliminate. In most of the Archive's canon, the Foundation isn't in the business of getting rid of the impossible. It's in the business of managing it forever, which means every anomaly it secures becomes a permanent responsibility, not a solved problem. A file once opened almost never closes. The SCP Foundation, as a shared universe, traces back to a single anonymous post on an image board in 2007. No mission statement yet. No object classes. Just a description of a statue that moves when you're not looking at it, written in the flat, procedural voice of a classified file. That post is now known as SCP-173, and it's considered the first SCP ever written. It didn't just introduce an anomaly. It introduced a format, and other writers immediately started copying that format, building outward until there was enough material to justify its own dedicated wiki in January 2008. What followed is one of the largest ongoing, collaborative fiction projects on the internet. Thousands of contributors, thousands of documents, all of it stitched into a single shared universe by one deliberate choice. Every file sounds like it was written by the same tired, overworked, deeply unbothered bureaucracy, whether the author behind it has been writing for 10 years or 10 minutes. That consistency didn't happen by accident. As the archive grew, the community built out shared reference material, guides on how object classes actually work, style guides on how a proper containment procedure should read, a shared timeline, a shared cast of recurring researchers and directors, even a shared internal mythology about who founded the Foundation and when. Some tales place its true origins centuries earlier than most people assume, tracing threads back through older secret societies long before the word Foundation was ever used. None of it is treated as fixed official history the way a single author story would be. It's closer to folklore that thousands of writers keep adding to, each one trying to stay faithful to a tone nobody actually wrote down as a rule. And somehow, almost all of them land in the same place anyway. Before we go further into the departments and the hierarchy, you need to understand the document format itself, because it isn't decoration, it's structural, and every choice inside it is doing a job. Every anomaly gets an item number, SCP, followed by a number, sometimes running into the thousands. On its own, the number tells you almost nothing, and that's deliberate. Names invite emotion. Numbers invite procedure. Directly below the number sits the object class, and that single line decides how the rest of the document is going to read. Below that comes the containment procedures, a physical description of the anomaly, and finally, if the case is significant enough, addenda. Incident reports, interview transcripts, experiment logs, case notes added over months or years, the way a real file would grow. It reads like a government report because that's exactly the effect it's built for. No adjectives where a fact will do, no fear in the prose, even when the content underneath it is horrifying. That contrast, flat language describing something monstrous, is the entire engine of SCP horror. It's also worth knowing there's a second type of document living alongside the case files. Not every piece of writing in the archive is a formal SCP entry. Many are what the community calls Foundation tales, short stories told through a specific character's eyes rather than a clinical report. A researcher's field notes, a Class D personnel's last day, an interview transcript that runs longer than any procedure ever would. The case files tell you what the Foundation contains. The tales tell you what containing it actually costs the people inside the organization, and most longtime readers will tell you the tales are where the real emotional weight of the mythos lives. So let's talk about that object class line properly, because it's the single most important piece of information at the top of any file. The original system used just 3 classes, and they're still the backbone of almost everything the Foundation writes. Safe class doesn't mean harmless. It means the Foundation understands the anomaly well enough that containing it doesn't take much ongoing effort. A safe object can still kill you if you're careless with it. Safe just means the danger is predictable. Euclid class is the middle ground, and it's where most anomalies in the archive actually live. Euclid means the Foundation doesn't fully understand what it's dealing with. Containment usually works, but it requires resources, monitoring, and a level of uncertainty the Foundation never gets fully comfortable with. Keter class is the one most people already know. Keter means containment is difficult, expensive, and never guaranteed. A Keter file is the Foundation admitting in writing that this thing could get out, and statistically, eventually will. There's a mental shortcut veteran researchers still use to sort a new discovery, sometimes called the locked box test. Put the anomaly in a sealed box. If nothing happens, it's safe. If you genuinely don't know what will happen, it's Euclid. If it gets out of the box easily, it's Keter. But 3 classes stopped being enough a long time ago. As the archive matured, writers needed more nuance, so secondary or esoteric classes started appearing alongside the big 3. Thaumiel is the rarest and most sensitive of them all. A Thaumiel class anomaly isn't a threat the Foundation is containing. It's a weapon the Foundation is actively using, specifically to contain or counteract something even worse. Knowledge of a Thaumiel asset is usually locked above the clearance of ordinary staff, sometimes known only to a handful of names at the very top of the organization. Apollyon sits at the opposite end of the spectrum entirely. An Apollyon class anomaly is one the Foundation openly admits it cannot contain. These are usually tied to what internal Foundation documents privately call a K-class scenario, a world-ending event either already unfolding or dangerously close to it. And the list keeps going, neutralized for anomalies that have permanently lost their properties. Explained for cases where something that looked impossible turned out to have a mundane cause after all. Uncontained for anomalies the Foundation knows exist but simply hasn't caught yet, which, as it turns out, describes more of the Foundation's own archive than most casual readers assume. There are rarer designations too, used sparingly enough that most readers only encounter them once or twice. Archon class, for anomalies that could theoretically be contained but are deliberately left alone because containing them would cause more damage than leaving them where they are. Ticonderoga class, for anomalies that genuinely don't need to be contained at all, existing safely alongside humanity without any procedure attached. Each of these secondary classes exists because somewhere one author needed a category the original 3 didn't cover, and the rest of the community liked it enough to keep using it. The result is a classification system that grew the same way the Foundation itself supposedly did, piece by piece, case by case, always expanding to cover whatever the last anomaly refused to fit into. Now the black bars. If you've ever looked at an SCP document, you've seen them. A line of text, and then a solid block of black where information should be, sometimes labeled data expunged. Sometimes just a wall of blacked out characters with no label at all. It looks like censorship, and functionally, inside the fiction, that's exactly what it is. But it isn't aimed at you. It's aimed at Foundation personnel reading their own internal files. A redaction usually means the content is considered too dangerous, too destabilizing, or simply above the clearance level of whoever is reading the document at that moment. Some redactions are hiding cognitohazards, information that causes harm to the reader simply by being understood. Some are hiding the identity of a researcher, a location, a body count. Some are hiding the true origin of an anomaly, because even the Foundation doesn't fully trust its own staff with that particular answer. And here's the detail that makes it work as horror instead of paperwork. The redaction is never explained. You're never told exactly what was removed or exactly why, and that gap, the thing being withheld, usually does more work on a viewer's imagination than the goriest description ever could. There's a practical side to this too, one that rarely gets discussed. Redaction isn't just narrative flavor, it mirrors how the Foundation itself is supposed to function. Compartmentalization. No single researcher, on paper, is ever supposed to hold the complete picture of the most dangerous anomalies in the archive. If a site is breached, if a researcher is compromised, if a document is leaked, the damage stays contained to whatever that one person actually knew. The black bar isn't only protecting a secret from you. In Universe, it's protecting the rest of the Foundation from whoever's reading it next. None of this information is available to just anyone inside the Foundation either. Access runs on a clearance system, usually numbered 0 through 5, and it's built so that almost nobody, at any level, ever gets the complete picture. Level 0 clearance covers non-essential personnel, support staff, people who technically work for the Foundation without ever being told what the Foundation actually contains. Levels 1 and 2 open up limited operational access, enough to do a specific job without seeing the wider archive around it. Level 3 is where most field researchers and site staff operate with meaningful access to the anomalies directly relevant to their work. Level 4 belongs to site directors and senior researchers, personnel trusted with the kind of information that could destabilize an entire facility if it leaked. And Level 5 is reserved for the Overseer Council alone. Full, unrestricted access to every file the Foundation has ever written, including the files that explain why some of the other files are redacted in the first place. The system means that a researcher can spend their entire career inside the Foundation, contribute to dozens of case files, and still never come close to understanding the full shape of the organization they work for. Every anomaly eventually needs to be tested. Someone has to open the door, someone has to touch the object, someone has to walk into the room, and the Foundation does not send its scientists to do that. It sends Class D personnel, D-Class as they're usually called throughout the archive, are expendable test subjects, historically drawn in most of the wiki's canon from death row inmates. People with nothing left to negotiate with, whose disappearance from the outside world raises no questions the Foundation can't quietly answer. The standard procedure most sites follow is brutal in its simplicity. A new batch of Class D personnel is assigned each month, and by the end of that month, the batch is expected to be gone, killed during testing in the more merciful version of events, or in many corners of the lore, administered amnestics and terminated regardless, because the alternative is letting someone who has witnessed classified anomalies walk back out into the world. It's the coldest piece of Foundation logic in the entire mythos, and the community that writes it knows exactly what they've built. Entire tales, entire recurring characters exist specifically to sit inside that horror. Class D personnel who start to matter to a researcher against every protocol. Personnel who almost escape. Personnel who ask the one question the Foundation never once asked out loud: why us? The Foundation's own answer, on the rare occasion it bothers to give one, is utilitarian to the point of being chilling. Someone has to find out what an anomaly does before it's released into the general population. Better a condemned criminal absorbs that risk than a civilian ever does. Not every corner of the archive agrees this logic should go unquestioned either. Some of the most widely read tales in the entire mythos are written specifically to push back against it. Following a researcher who starts keeping a Class D subject alive past their assigned batch, or a Class D personnel who becomes a recurring character across dozens of stories instead of disappearing after 30 days like the procedure demands. Those stories tend to become fan favorites precisely because they refuse to let the reader stay comfortable with the arithmetic the Foundation runs on. Not everyone who encounters an anomaly becomes Class D. Most witnesses are ordinary people: a hiker, a police officer, a family in the wrong house on the wrong night. For them, the Foundation reaches for a different tool entirely: amnestics. Amnestics are the Foundation's memory-altering compounds, and over the years the archive built out an entire internal pharmacology around them, sorted into lettered classes. The mildest classes erase only the last few minutes of an encounter. Others reach further back, some deep enough to touch a person's earliest memories, some strong enough to trigger a full dissociative break, so the subject can be given a new identity outright. Some classes don't erase memory at all. They distort trust in it instead. A gaslighting-style amnestic won't take the memory away. It will make the person doubt it ever happened, until the encounter feels less like something that occurred and more like a half-remembered dream. This is how the Foundation protects what the community often calls the veil, the invisible line separating the world ordinary people live in from the world its case files actually describe. It isn't only the Foundation containing objects. It's the Foundation quietly editing the memory of an entire species, one dose at a time, so that normal can keep functioning as a believable idea. Scale is the part people underestimate. Amnestic use in the archive isn't limited to one witness at a time. Entire towns have had their memory of a single night quietly rewritten. Entire news cycles have been redirected. The logic that applies to one hiker on a mountain trail scales in the Foundation's own procedures all the way up to a population the size of a city whenever the veil is threatened badly enough to require it. Files and drugs and locked doors work most of the time. When they don't, the Foundation has one more layer, and this one carries weapons. Mobile task forces, usually shortened to MTF, are specialized units assigned to anomalies that regular site security can't handle alone: breaches, recoveries, direct engagement with something that has already gotten loose. Each task force gets a naming pattern that's become instantly recognizable across the archive. A Greek letter, a number, and a nickname earned through its own operational history. Alpha 1, Red Right Hand, tasked with protecting the O5 Council directly. Epsilon 11, Nine-Tailed Fox, responsible for large-scale containment breaches. Dozens more exist underneath them, each one built around a narrow, specific purpose. because a task force trained to handle a rogue Keter-class entity isn't the same unit you send to quietly clean up a small town's worth of witnesses. Task force personnel occupy a strange space in the hierarchy. They know more about the anomalous than almost anyone outside senior research staff, simply because their survival depends on it, and yet, many of them are treated as disposable in their own right, sent into situations regular staff are never asked to enter. Some task forces exist for narrower, stranger purposes than combat. Units built to negotiate rather than fight. Units assembled specifically because their members share an immunity or resistance to one particular anomaly's effects, making them the only personnel who can safely approach it at all. The naming convention keeps expanding right alongside the archive itself, and by now there are dozens of these units on record, each one a small, self-contained story about exactly which kind of failure the Foundation decided it needed to prepare for next. With everything you've just heard, D-class personnel, memory alteration on a mass scale, weapons pointed at things nobody fully understands, you'd assume an organization like this operates without any internal restraint at all. It doesn't. At least not officially. The Ethics Committee exists specifically to review Foundation activity for exactly these concerns. On paper, it holds real authority. It can block a research proposal. It can restrict how a dangerous experiment is allowed to proceed. It can, in theory, say no to the O5 Council itself. In practice, most Foundation personnel treat the committee as something between a formality and a joke, a body that exists to make the paperwork feel justified after the decision has already been made. And the tales that take the committee seriously tend to be some of the most unsettling in the entire archive, because they suggest the joke isn't actually true. That somewhere in that room, someone is genuinely keeping score. There's also the decommissioning process, one of the Ethics Committee's quieter but darker responsibilities. Not every anomaly stays contained forever. Some are formally ordered destroyed, and the department that carries that out treats it with the same procedural coldness as everything else in the archive, right down to the paperwork filed afterward. Even ending an anomaly's existence in this universe gets reduced to a form. All of this, the sites, the Class D program, the amnestic supply chain, the task forces, has to be run by someone, day to day, without any of it becoming visible from the outside. That's the administrative department, the bureaucratic backbone most individual case files never bother to show you because it isn't dramatic. It's logistics. It's human resources. It's the department that sources new Class D personnel, staffs new facilities, and keeps the lights on at sites most of its own employees will never personally see. Every facility answers to a site director, responsible for everything happening inside their walls. And above every site director eventually sits a body that most Foundation employees have heard referenced, and almost none of them have ever actually met. The Overseer Council, 13 individuals referred to only by number, 05-1 through 05-13, and by most accounts inside the archive, that's already more than the majority of Foundation staff will ever learn about them. Officially, the O5 Council makes the calls no one else is authorized to make. Termination of a Keter-class object. Activation of a Thaumiel asset. Decisions that could end the lives of thousands, made by 13 names nobody outside that room actually knows. Most personnel spend an entire career without direct confirmation the Council is even real. Below a certain clearance threshold, staff aren't told the Council exists at all. And the archive plays with that uncertainty constantly. Some tales suggest a handful of O5 seats are held by something other than an ordinary human being. Others suggest the Council doesn't fully trust its own membership, that seats have quietly changed hands, been impersonated, or been fought over behind the scenes. That uncertainty isn't a gap in the writing. It's the entire point. An organization built around secrecy would never let its own audience see all the way to the top, and neither, it seems, does the Foundation let its own staff. Except there's a recurring thread across enough tales that it stops feeling like a rumor and starts feeling like something the Foundation itself is uneasy about. Above the O5 Council, there may be one more position, the Administrator, credited, in the archive's own framing material, with writing the Foundation's mission statement in the first place, the very words, secure, contain, protect. Associated again and again across different stories with a single specific anomaly that most staff are never permitted near, never confirmed as one continuous person, a title pass between successive individuals or something else the archive hasn't fully explained yet. If the O5 Council is the ceiling most employees will never reach, the administrator is the idea that there was always another floor above it, and that whoever built this organization never fully stepped away from it. And here's something worth understanding before we start opening individual files in future episodes. The Foundation isn't the only organization on this board, and it definitely isn't the only one with an opinion about how anomalies should be handled. The Global Occult Coalition operates with a philosophy that's almost the opposite of the Foundation's. Where the Foundation studies and contains, the Coalition frequently prefers to simply destroy what it finds, viewing long-term containment as a risk not worth carrying. The Chaos Insurgency began, according to most of the archive's framing, as a splinter faction that broke away from the Foundation itself, and now operates as an organization willing to weaponize the exact anomalies the Foundation is trying to lock away. And the Serpent's Hand takes the opposite position from almost everyone. A loose network that believes anomalies shouldn't be contained by anyone at all, actively working to free entities the Foundation has spent decades securing. None of these groups agree on what the right answer even is, and that disagreement, quietly, is part of what makes the whole universe feel less like one organization's story and more like an entire, unstable world. There are others still. Marshall, Carter, and Dark, a private company that treats anomalies as inventory to be bought, sold, and licensed for profit. Anderson Robotics, building anomalous technology into consumer products most buyers never realize are anomalous at all. Groups collectively known across the archive as GOIS, groups of interest, each with their own philosophy, their own resources, and their own reasons the Foundation can't simply shut them all down. Every one of these organizations believes it's the reasonable one. The Foundation believes that too. That's usually how the worst decisions in this universe get made. So here's what you're actually looking at every time this channel opens a new file. Not just a monster. A bureaucracy built specifically to survive contact with monsters, with layers of deniability stacked on top of each other, so that no single person, at any level, ever has to hold the entire truth at once. Class D personnel who don't get to say no. Amnestics that rewrite what an entire town remembers. Redactions that protect the reader more than they protect the secret. Task forces sent in when the paperwork stops working. An ethics committee that may or may not actually mean anything. 13 numbers at the top who might not even be the top. From here forward, when we open an individual file, a specific number, a specific anomaly, you'll already understand the machine it's sitting inside. You'll know why the object class matters before we even read it. You'll know what a black bar is hiding, even when we never find out exactly what. That's the Foundation. Not just contained monsters. Contained truth. I'm Shroudex, and this was your way in.